AWS as a platform, or specifically on the data warehousing and BI front. So from that perspective, I have gained some experience with respect to AWS platform as well, and that's where I wanted to leverage my experience and share my learnings and, as part of this training program as well, so that we can collectively grow in our respective careers growth paths, right? So um, uh, that's all about myself. Moving ahead, I want to actually, before we actually start with the session, there are a few prerequisites which I want to actually lay out before we actually start the regular training program. So for this particular training program, as this is a AWS platform training program, definitely some conceptual knowledge would be required with respect to AWS. But I understand that there would be, some people who might be coming from a background who may not have any insights on what AWS is all about or what cloud computing is all about. So as part of the first section, in fact, we would be covering that. So although it's a prerequisite, but we would be covering in the first module with respect to help you understand what is introduction, what is cloud computing, uh, and we'll also go into a little bit more detail about what are the major services which AWS offers, what is actually AWS and what are those services, most important services which AWS offers. Specifically, we will touch upon, some of the important services and not, obviously not all the services at a high level during the introduction. So we will touch upon the services which are most importantly used and which are actually required as a prerequisite knowledge for this particular section. So, but the major prerequisite knowledge which is required is actually to have some exposure on data warehousing concepts, because because this is something, in case if you don't have any exposure or experience, I would suggest that before we start with the regular session, it will be good if you can just enroll, if you can just do some pre-reading, if you can just do some pre-reading as well on the data warehousing concepts. Okay. Now, the major intent of this particular program it's specifically designed because I also myself felt the need when I was actually going through my learning curve as part of AWS data warehousing learning the concepts. So during my learning curve as well, I actually understood that there are a few services which specifically or wholly focus on the data warehousing aspect of the cloud computing. So AWS is in itself is a very huge, huge in terms of training content, or in a content wise, AWS offers its services which are applicable to various specific areas, right? Now, people coming from data warehousing background who have some knowledge on or who have some experience on traditional data warehousing, definitely they need to actually, as the dynamics are evolving these days, a lot of clients are actually migrating their infrastructure to cloud. A lot of the traditional data warehouses which are developed on traditional databases, they are getting involved and migrated to cloud. So the need in the market right now is actually to ensure that we know the pros and cons, we know the challenges, we know uh, the services offered by some of the platforms like AWS and Azure, which can actually help these clients easily migrate their existing systems on cloud and help them, you know, continuously evolve using those services which are offered specifically with respect to data warehousing. So that is where we as IT professionals or we as consultants need to ensure that we know that particular technology well, specifically catering to the data warehousing needs, right? So the focus of this course, and that is the need which actually I felt while I was in my learning curve, that it is very important to help people get themselves ramped up quickly so that they can evolve. They can help their clients evolve into the cloud technologies very easily and very quickly, right, and efficiently as well. So that is the whole intent of this training program, so that we kind of tend to learn those technologies or learn those services in a little bit more detail, um, specifically focusing on the data warehousing aspect, right? So, so that is where we will be focusing on. So, as part of this demo session, I'll walk you through the um, the the content of the training, how we'll be progressing, what all topics we'll be covering, specifically what all modules we'll be covering, and what all topics we'll be covering, and then further we'll go on to the to review the schedule as well with respect to the regular sessions. Right? So we would be so the course I have designed is would be definitely AWS content is more of you know a lot of people kind of, that's what my experience is, that a lot of people during the training programs tend to find AWS as a very theoretical kind of a course, and which tends to leads them to a little bit boring stuff. So we have it, and I completely understand that that's a normal tendency, and it is very important to have practical as well as theoretical sessions combined. So the course, the way it is designed, it has a mix of a lot of case studies as well. So we will be doing good hands-on along with understanding theoretical concepts, because it is very important that we kind of visit the theoretical stuff a little bit in detail as well, because most of the times a lot of concepts are hidden behind those theoretical knowledge. So it is very important to actually understand those concepts and then apply them as part of those case studies. So we'll be doing some lab sessions,
Muted.
and along with that, as in when we progress, we will consolidate the theoretical knowledge and apply them in the lab sessions. So that is the way we would be actually proceeding. That is the way we'll be proceeding with the training content during the regular sessions. Okay. So I am assuming that you guys are able to see my screen. So just to let me know in case if you're facing any challenges with respect to screen sharing. So so on a quick note, our training program is focusing on four basic or five basic modules, wherein I'll be focusing on four specific services, and along with that, the fifth module would be, or the first module would be, I would rather say, which will be more focused on introduction to cloud computing and AWS, right? So the four basic services which we'll cater to is Amazon Redshift, Amazon Athena, Amazon Kinesis, and Amazon QuickSight. So these are four basic services which we will be covering in detail and in depth, so that you guys get a good understanding to start with, in case of any kind of cloud migration projects, right? Okay. So, so I'll just quickly walk through the deck which I'll be using with respect to our training, um, and this is one training material which is specifically we use it as part of this training program. So I'll quickly walk you through the slides specifically so that we understand what our topics are specifically going to be covered once we start the regular sessions. So we'll be talking about what is cloud information about these services, because these are majorly the AWS infrastructure services uh, which are required for few applications, but then they're still the backbone of AWS. So I wanted to make sure that as part of our introduction, at least these services are clear, so that in case if we are referring to any of these jargons, they don't sound like very new to you guys. So we'll cover these in the first part of the course itself, and also we'll talk about ideas and Redshift, out of which just a minute, please. Sorry for that. And also we'll talk about AWS Redshift and RDS services. Um, RDS is nothing but a relational database service, and Redshift is one of the data warehousing service which actually provides on AWS. You can actually migrate all your existing traditional data warehouses to Redshift. So we will discuss in more detail as well. So Redshift is something which is a key important crux of this particular course as a service, which we will cover in more detail, right? So in the next few slides, as we move ahead, you would see that we will be covering Amazon Redshift in more detail about what Amazon Redshift is, what are its benefits and features, um, um, covering the architecture, system architecture for Redshift, what are the components, and so it is important to understand the architecture behind the scenes within the Amazon Redshift as well, because sorry. So it is important to understand the architecture as well, although it is a little bit of a theoretical stuff. But the whole idea behind Amazon Redshift is it acts very well with respect to data warehouses, because any data warehousing system is uh, is in itself designed to actually have the analytical and reporting applications easily consume the data from the data browsing system, or in a more efficiently or high performancely, you know, uh, uh, pull the data from the data warehousing system for any kind of analysis. Now, any traditional database would act the same way as it is for OLTP or for OLAP, right? For analytical processing or for any kind of performance, for any kind of reporting or analytics being performed on that data warehouse, it'll act the same way. The only difference would be the modeling of that particular database. So we would have star schema design, or we would have an entity relationship model. So that would be the difference. But the infrastructure behind the scenes is the same, be it SQL Server, be it Oracle, or be it any other traditional database. Now with Amazon Redshift, the infrastructure behind the scenes, the way it is designed, the architecture, the way it is designed, is specifically optimized for creating data warehouses. So that is where the role of architecture understanding the architecture comes into play and becomes even more important to understand the architecture and its components, right? So that is where we'll be focusing in a little more detail, and how then that architecture actually uh, gives, and on what all parameters the architecture gives us a better performance. That is also we will try to understand, right? One of the very key important parameters with respect to performances in Redshift is columnar storage, which which means that when you actually pull the data, it uh, or the way it stores the data is actually in the form of a columnar storage, so that it can be pulled very quickly. So we will try to understand the the performance parameters for Amazon Redshift as well in a pretty more detail as well. So and then we'll move on to a few case studies in Redshift, wherein one of the basic case studies would be how to actually configure the database with respect to your creating database tables, loading the data, some sample data, executing some queries. So we'll do that, and then we will also have a case study on tuning the table design. So there is a concept of sort and distribution keys, right? Which is something very similar to, I would say, primary keys or indexes in your traditional scenario, but then not exactly same as that. So there are some different. When I say similar, the only purpose of similar is that when you create indexes, obviously the data pull becomes, easier, right? That's the purpose of creating indexes. And similarly, sort and distribution keys also help you to ensure the way if you rightly set them or rightly select them, your data pull will become more easier, right? So that's the purpose is same, but the way of defining them is a little bit different. So we will try to understand that as part of that this case study, and then we'll also try to do another case study in Redshift, wherein we load the data um, uh, using some data files on S3, and using some copy commands, and trying to understand what vacuum and analyze functions do. So that is where uh, we will do a mix of some theoretical and practical stuff by through these case studies. And the next topic on the Redshift would be to understand the best practices. There are these are a few best practices which are very important to keep in mind while you are actually doing any kind of Redshift projects, so that they are followed specifically to what AWS recommends, right? So we'll go in more detail on these best practices. Now, AWS in itself, from a pricing standpoint, is one of the key benefits, which we'll cover in detail. But then, one of the key benefits on AWS for any service is pricing, right? So it actually brings down, when you compare it to your traditional infrastructure, which when I say always traditional, it you can in more layman terms you can understand it as a lot of on-premise infrastructure which the clients would have bought the servers on their premises, managing those servers, installing applications on those servers on premise, buying licenses on premise, and then putting on those servers. So that is what our traditional infrastructure means, while on cloud it is a little bit differently it works. So even the pricing strategy and the pricing options which AWS provide for each of the services is also different. So will go in a little bit more detail to understand the pricing option for each of these services which we'll be discussing. So uh, Redshift has a few couple of options with respect to the pricing strategy, which we will try to understand as well. Uh, uh, Moving ahead to the next service is which is Amazon Athena. So we'll see what Athena is in a nutshell. It is a very high level. It is a serverless querying service wherein you can directly pull data or uh, uh, directly run queries on top of your files itself. So that is one very innovative offering from AWS, wherein you can run queries on top of your files directly, right? So that is where Athena comes into picture. So there is no need to actually load the data anywhere. You directly connect to your files, run the queries, whatever you want, select the data and view it and analyze it, right? So that is where Athena plays a very important role, and we will see what all features it has, and what all pricing strategies also it has. So this is where we will cover Athena in detail, and we have a case study in Athena where I'll show you how to actually uh, connect to using Athena to pull data from a file, right? So that is where we'll do a case study as well. The next service which we'll cover is Amazon QuickSight, wherein uh, which is basically a data visualization service which AWS offers. So if you want to create some smart visualizations on the fly to perform some ad hoc analytics, or to do some on the fly kind of a reporting on top of any file, I would say. uh, you know uh, it QuickSight is something which it gives you that flexibility or those features uh, very easily and very efficiently. That is This is one service which is offered on the BI front or on the reporting front by AWS. So we'll go into a little bit more detail to understand what Amazon QuickSight is, what are its features, right? And then we'll do a quick case study uh, to kind of perform some analysis on a particular data set, right? The next service which we will cover is Amazon Kinesis, which is basically, there are real-time streaming data these days. So the volume of data specifically which is generated real-time from, let's say, from social media applications, right, or from a lot of video streaming applications are there, or a lot of data streaming applications are there, audio streaming applications are there. So the the because of the volume of data which is increasing these days, the importance of analysis of this data is also increasing at the same time, right? Because there are a lot of clients who are now, since the consumers or the users are using these applications very extensively, the 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 clients are actually trying to analyze the data. They want to analyze this data more efficiently, so that, and more quickly, I would rather say, right, with less latency, so that they kind of keep on extending their reach and keep on improvising their marketing strategies through digital uh, media, right? So that is where the need of Amazon Kinesis comes into picture, because it provides the real time. It helps you provide the real time analysis, in a much more quicker way. So we will try to see what Amazon Kinesis is, what are its benefits, what are its capabilities. As I told you that um, uh, it can analyze data through video streams, through data streams, right? And it has some data analytic capability as well, uh, which can actually perform analysis through these streams of data, right? Uh, then we'll see how each of these streams work. Um, each of these video streams and data streams work. What are the use cases specifically? right? So like for example, for video streams, you can actually uh, extract data from the devices like your webcams, and then kind of analyze it for any kind of specific purposes. So we'll see some specific use cases, which AWS has already implemented using these services. So then we'll go into data streams and see some use cases, right? So that is where we will kind of try to understand the basic idea and concept behind Amazon Kinesis. So Amazon Kinesis is one of the very new services which has been recently launched in the last year by Amazon. So and it is still evolving with respect to its practical uses in various by various clients, but still some of the use cases which Amazon have worked on, we will be discussing those use cases specifically with respect to Kinesis. Okay. So this would be the end of our course and the with respect to the training content. Uh, so just quickly sharing the training plan with you guys. We would be, yeah. So we would be, if you can see, we'll be starting the regular sessions from 11th, which is coming Wednesday, and it will go on for almost a month. I would say a little lesser than a month. Um, uh, and we'll cover all of these topics which we just discussed. I have already highlighted these topics. And the timings for the session would be 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. IST. Uh, you can actually convert it to the respective time zones, but for now it will be 9:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. EST. Yeah. So so we will be sharing this particular schedule with you guys, uh, so you can actually you can so based on the demo session, I would suggest that you can quickly enroll yourself for the regular training program so that we can move ahead and without missing anything in between, you guys can get started with the uh, with the regular sessions. Right. So let me tell you that the benefit which you'll achieve once this training gets completed is that, as I earlier mentioned as well, uh, in case if you're working on some traditional stuff, you will be very easily able to, get yourself ramped up in any kind of data warehousing cloud migration projects. And at this point, I think a lot of companies are investing their time, money, and effort in terms of getting their existing systems migrated to cloud. And AWS in itself has one of the biggest market share uh, with respect to cloud migration, offering the cloud migration services, right? So that is where you can actually evolve yourself or upgrade yourself in terms of learning something new as a technology, and make sure that you guys can uh, leverage uh, you guys can leverage a lot in terms of this evolvement, right? So I think that's all from